ridiculous. Well, here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow I'm taking part in the Wayne State Law School Symposium. I don't know if you guys know about that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to be there. So I was there the first. Within a couple hours, I was making my call to get a reservation.
Well, there you go. Well, the rumor is that Mike Cox is going to be the keynote speaker, and the rumor is that he's. Don't hold me to this, but that he's going to say that marijuana is not a gateway drug. I don't know if he's. That's just a rumor. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what I heard. So
that would be great. That would be great.
Yes, it would be.
So the rumor is he's going to say alcohol is a gateway drug, but that marijuana is not. Don't hold me to that because I've hustled with Mr. Cox in the past when I was representing Jeffrey Feiger, so I can't. But we'll see.
I wonder
what's that?
I wonder what he thinks about Lara.
Well, it's interesting because we've,
which LARA?
Yeah, the licensing and regulation. No. The point being that he and I think it was August of 2010 wrote his only opinion about medical marijuana, and he had been challenged on the question of whether or not he could privately, he could outsource to a private company.
Outsource.
Right, and he responded by saying that this registry is, we have to protect it, and we can't let some private, because we won't be able to control it as a government because it's too important to protect the privacy rights of these patients. That's the law says. That's the only time I ever really spoke on it. A lot of people were disappointed originally that they thought he could have been more outspoken in helping it get implemented. But I'll tell you, I don't think there's any person in the community that wouldn't have trade him
for shooting. There were some really good quotes in that opinion from the Welch versus Attorney General.
Right.
That initiatives needed to be interpreted liberally to effectuate their purposes,
and to
rather than hamper
the intent
them.
of the voters.
Right.
So there were some good things in there for our law, I think.
Neil, I got to tell you, and I admitted this earlier. My lawyer should have advised me. I borrowed some of the I don't know what metaphor to use it, but the wolf and the chicken for my trial today.
The wolves and the hen house. I'd love to hear it because that's my speech tomorrow.
Well, but I don't want to. No,
tell me. You might have done better than me. I'd like to hear it.
I mean, it was just the concept of these initiatives across the country. Are the chickens don't like the way they're being treated by the wolves, so they initiate a law, and they give it right back to the
exactly right
wolves. But I said this. I go. My point today was that if you have a jury trial, then you have a check on that. You know what I mean? And why the Michigan marijuana has not been implemented is because we haven't been able to have jury trials. Like today, what would happen in all these cases? They would have, we were able to try the Waterford case. We get, without certification.
My speech, my presentation, I did kind of an analysis. I don't know if it's really scientific, but it's as scientific as this dummy, me can get. And I went through and I looked at all of the medical marijuana opinions that have come out of the Court of Appeals. Judge O'Connell's had 4. The odds of a judge in how many Court of Appeals judges are there? 20. Let's say there are 20. The odds of out of 10 cases, one judge getting 4. I would take those odds almost any time in any casino. He's been on 4 of them. And I then decided to do an analysis of the background of the judges who decided some of those cases. And if you consider municipal attorneys, lawyers who work for municipal law firms, ex-prosecutors, and judges who work for the government, one was a counsel for John Engler, then on every medical marijuana case, there's been at least one, and in almost all, at least there's 2 judges who worked on the government side of the courtroom. That's a pretty startling revelation when you're asking judges to all of a sudden rule in favor of patients, because there's a certain alignment. I mean, people have been. I was a prosecutor from 1993 to 1997. When people ask me about that, I say that everybody has sinned once in their life. That was mine. And back then, the same cops with the same units, with the same tactics, and the same prosecutors who are currently investigating and prosecuting marijuana cases were investigating and prosecuting cases back then. The very same ones. So, look shame on us for trusting the people who were in office.
Well,
I've always said this, that we are letting the patients and caregivers, medical marijuana proponents, are letting the foxes guard the hen house.
If we don't take action to elect people that are favorable to our position, then we do deserve exactly what we get. But that's why the people in this room, the people on the radio waves, and yourself, Neil, are very important in defending the rights of patients in ways that sometimes patients don't normally have access to through larger.
Well, there are things that they can do. Like, let me tell you, Rick, here's one thing that people aren't doing, which I thought about today. I'm in the middle of a major fight with Bloomfield Township. Okay, I'm a Bloomfield Township resident, and I sued on behalf of an anonymous patient, along with Tom Loeb, who's another lawyer who is co-counsel some of these cases with me, as I co-counsel some with Michael. We sued Bloomfield Township. Bloomfield Township is a tiny little township in the state of Michigan. It doesn't even comprise 1% of the population, much less than that. Bloomfield Township is devoting all of their resources, at least legally, because they've got some excellent lawyers who they've hired to represent them, to declare the Medical Marijuana Act unconstitutional. This is my township. So other townships are doing the same thing. So here's the question that I ask everybody who's a medical marijuana patient or caregiver or advocate. What is your township doing? I'm fighting mine. Are you find people, ask them to go to a council meeting, walk up to the podium during the open mic session, and ask them, I'd like each one of you to tell me where you stand on medical marijuana. And are you going to use my tax dollars to try to undo the Medical Marijuana Act? And if you are, I want you on record.
What we've recently seen, too, Neil, is that these type of actions do have an effect on surrounding communities. Recently, it was quoted in the New Baltimore patch that the city of New Baltimore was considering a medical marijuana ordinance. One of the reasons cited was because the explicit amount of money that was spent by Chesterfield Township in defending themselves with the nuisance lawsuit with Big Daddy's management group. So we're seeing that other municipalities are finding that these bad examples are not some path that they want to follow, and that they're taking a more open-minded approach.
That's not happening enough. I mean, I really did, my pitch is going to be that we pass an act, and you would like to think that everybody, you just kind of turn around. Do you guys remember the Looney Tunes cartoons with, you guys old enough to remember that, with Sylvester and Tweety?
Oh, yeah, sure.
And Granny. Okay. Remember when Granny would leave the house and Sylvester would be smiling with the halo around his head like he was, and Granny would walk out and turn, now you take care of Tweety, okay, Sylvester? And he would turn around and Sylvester would smile and nod. You know where I'm going. And then as soon as the door closed, let the pursuit of Tweety begin. And then Granny would open the door back up and there'd be like feathers flying around Sylvester's mouth. That's what we've got. That's what we've got. That's Bill Schuette. That's Rick Jones. That's what we're getting.
They're taking the shots they can take.
It's funny that you say that, Neil, because the main police officer that in this case in Shiawassee, where the felony aspect of it, the circuit court judge, same judge in the Larry King case, ruled that his constitutional rights were violated, that they, there was no consent, and they were still charging him with this possession of this pipe. The officer, when asked to describe the law or whatever, turned to the jury and said to them, imagine Foghorn Leghorn, and imagine the Tasmanian Devil, or whatever he said, but he imagine that the patient is Bugs Bunny, and imagine that the caregiver is Dave. Like, his whole perception of the community was a cartoon to him. I mean, we're using it here in a way that, to describe exactly the cartoonness by which they're acting, but his perception, his analogy that he uses to try to make the community look like a cartoon. It was just, it's interesting that you use that, because he.
Look,
Harry Potter
honestly, in some ways, you almost wish if you had to rewrite the Medical Marijuana Act that you would, instead of having a drug czar, you would have a medical marijuana czar, and he'd be the final spokesperson on policy and law enforcement action. And he'd be able to override any case, or she'd be able to override any any case. I've long said that for about a year or two, that anybody that was convicted in a medical marijuana case, whether by plea or by trial, should have amnesty. The prosecutors should come together and offer these people amnesty for relying on different interpretations of the act. And it's not happening.
The case that the clinical relief case compared to the Waterford case is a classic example of that. And the ruling by courageous Judge O'Brien, argued
Dan O'Brien.
Very effectively by the lawyers. Obviously, you guys did a fantastic job. And his ruling, in a way, is supported by the fact that McMillan, in the Waterford case, ruled differently. Like, you've got even more judges looking at this differently. And his point was that it clearly cannot be something that proper notice was given, that the actual persons that were being charged, were told, what behavior is prohibited and what is not. I always use the example.
Look, I hate the idea. I mean, what's so funny is that what's so sad in a way is that I'll tell you a story. This guy came to my office and he was he had a very serious condition. He changed jobs and his Cobra denied him. His insurance carrier denied him because he had a pre-existing condition, which was serious. And so he was without health care. And he didn't know. And so he started to grow, marijuana. And then a police officer came to his house looking for his ex-girlfriend because she had a warrant for some, BS traffic ticket. Guy opens the door and he says, "Hey, I smell, is that marijuana in there?" "Oh yeah, I'm a patient." Shows him the card. Well, the police sit on the house for 2 days. And then something else happens. Some guy comes and goes, and he's only there for a short period of time. And then they crack open the door. This is a guy that really took it up because he didn't have any other way to any other health insurance, any other way to try to medicate himself for anything.
And they used the card really as the key to the search warrant, but ended up just sitting on the house to get some other piece of evidence, supposed evidence.
And I'm going to tell you something. And I think you want to hear something. In the case that we just actually won the other day, not the clinical relief case, but the other case in Oakland County, the narcotics enforcement team, these units of kind of multi-jurisdictional cops, they went to a building to investigate a murder, and around the back they thought that there was a marijuana grow operation. They kick in the door. They find a medical marijuana certification that belonged to my client. Okay, and the cop then takes this, and he must have thought it was like the key to unencrypt, foreign intelligence, because he guarded it with his life, and he didn't tell anybody else about it. But he went and got a search warrant for my client's house in Novi. Doesn't mention that at all. They kick in the door. They take the plants. In the meantime, there was no mention of this anywhere in any affidavit, in any search warrant, in any police report. I happened to actually catch it because my client said to me, "Look, there's no way that they could have found my name living in Novi because I just moved there. They didn't have my name." And then we traced it back to this document, and the city of Southfield tried to resist giving me this document for weeks at a time until I finally said, "Well, you can come tell the judge why you won't give it to me." Then they sent it to me. And when we saw it, I thought, this is what this cop did. He actually broke the medical marijuana law. Like, if he actually testified, and again, the prosecutors dismissed the case, which I give him a lot of credit for, but had that cop taken the stand in that case, the first question I would have said, "So you're a cop?" "Yeah." "You enforce the law?" "Yeah." "All laws?" "Yeah." "Are you any better than the rest of us?" "No." They would have said, "Read this law." "Yeah." "You broke that one." And my next question was, now be careful before you answer because you might want to plead the fifth.